Chiefs fans, oh boy, Chiefs fans, I have some mind-blowing stats for you in this episode. I am so excited to share them. I did a little research, and I'm pretty sure you're going to leave this video not feeling the same about a certain player on the Chiefs offense as you did before this video. And so I won't beat around the bush too much more. This is Gary McKenzie, host of Gridiron Lines RGR Football. I believe it to be the best Chiefs YouTube channel in existence of history of all time. So take that as you will. But the mind-blowing stats in this week's episode are all centered around Rashee Rice. So last week he finally had his breakout game, 107 yards, 1 touchdown, 10 targets, 8 receptions. And many of us as Chiefs fans, maybe we're not as stupid as we all think we are because we've been screaming for the past, I don't know how many weeks, to throw Rashee Rice the ball more often. And what do you know? They target him 10 times. He catches 8 of them, and he has over 100 yards receiving, and the Chiefs' offense looks great. So we're not dumb. The Chiefs have got to incorporate Rashee Rice more into their game plan, and they've been trying to do that throughout the season, and then it finally coalesced and crescendoed last week versus the Raiders. So Rashee Rice's target share has been really low up until last week. So week 1, 5 targets. Week 2, 2 targets. Week 3, 7 targets. Week 5, 5 targets. Week 4, 5 targets. Sorry, I got those 2 backwards. Week 6, 4 targets. Week 7, 6 targets. Week 8, 5 targets. Week 9, 2 targets. Week 11, 5 targets. And then finally, week 12, 10 targets. So they've been kind of playing it tepidly with Rashee Rice starting out the season. And I'll have some more background on Andy Reid's history with rookie wide receivers here in a little bit. But I was just so happy to see the Chiefs finally throw him the ball. And if you noticed, in 3 of those games this year, Rashee Rice has had 6 or more targets in 3 games. In those 3 games, the Chiefs are 3-0, and they've averaged 34.3 points per game. I don't know what more evidence you need, the Chiefs offense needs to see to continue to incorporate Rashee Rice into the offense. And coming out of the draft, Rashee Rice was my draft crush. Before the Chiefs even drafted him, I wanted them to take him at wide receiver. I don't get draft crushes very often. My last draft crush was Patrick Mahomes. We saw how that played out, and I think Rashee Rice is going to be a very good wide receiver for this Chiefs team for years to come. And the reason I had him as a draft crush goes back to my time when I was in grad school and I was writing my master's thesis, and my thesis was based on improving the accuracy of NFL drafting using machine learning and the genetic algorithm. Through all that work that I did back in grad school, I came to this conclusion that wide receivers need to have 2 things to give them the best shot to have success and high production in the NFL. Those 2 things are, 1, the player needs to have production in college, and 2, the wide receiver needs to have good athleticism. The reason I had a draft crush for Rashee Rice was because he did have production at SMU, was a very productive wide receiver, and 2, he was one of the most athletic wide receivers in the 2023 NFL draft. I think he was at the top of the list in terms of burst and in terms of his vertical leap. So this is a highly athletic player that also converted that into production at the college level. There's a lot of NFL GMs and head coaches and basically NFL teams from their leadership that think we can take an athletic guy and we can mold him to be the player we want to be. But I believe that there's a strong correlation between production in college and production in the NFL. And if a player doesn't have a lot of production in college, I think it's going to be just as hard to have that production in the NFL. I know NFL coaches are great at what they do. NFL GMs, for the most part, are pretty good at what they do. But sometimes they can be very stubborn, and they think that they know more than a college head coach, when in reality, those college head coaches are pretty good at what they do too, and they're trying to maximize production for their players as well. Every once in a while, you have a player that comes out that didn't have a lot of production at the wide receiver position, and they come through and they have a great year or a great career. But the majority of cases, you're really favoring your odds if you draft players that have high production like Rashee Rice and have a high level of athleticism like Rashee Rice. So the mind-blowing stat number 1 is that when Rashee Rice has 6 or more targets, the Chiefs average 34.3 points per game, and they're 3-0. So I want this Chiefs offense to continue to throw him the ball. Now, currently, Rashee Rice has 56 targets, 44 receptions for 527 yards and 5 touchdowns. As always, we have my scribbles here that I'm giving you this information from. If you take that yardage total that Rashee Rice currently has, extrapolate that for the full 17-game season, he's on pace for 814 yards and 8 touchdowns. If you're curious for comparison's sake, Juju Smith-Schuster in 2022, when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, he finished the season with 933 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Rashee Rice already has him passed in touchdowns, and I believe that last week's game versus the Raiders was a sign of things to come, and he very well could pass up Juju Smith-Schuster's 933 yards receiving. So, moving on to more interesting things about Rashee Rice, he currently ranks 7th in the NFL in terms of receiving yards for rookies. The 6 wide receivers ahead of him are Puka Nacua, having an unbelievable season no one saw coming, 924 yards receiving for him. Tank Dell has 709 yards receiving. By the way, my algorithm would have really liked Tank Dell because he was the most productive wide receiver in college last year, and he also had good speed, good athleticism. So he's number 2. Jordan Addison, number 3 with 686 yards receiving. Zay Flowers, number 4 with 613. Very good-looking player in Baltimore. Josh Downs, 566 yards receiving with the Colts. Sam Laporta, a tight end, the only tight end in the top, 7, 8, 9, 10. He has 539 yards receiving. And then you have number 7, Rashee Rice, at 527. So the Chiefs got a player in the second round that is number 7 overall in receiving yards in terms of rookies. And then also for comparison's sake, Jackson Smith-Njigba with the Seahawks currently only has 406 yards receiving. He was the number 20 overall pick, and he currently ranks 12th in the NFL in terms of total receiving yards for rookies. So, comparatively speaking, Rashee Rice, when compared against his peers, is doing very well. I know that the Chiefs' offense has had lulls this season, and it doesn't feel like the Chiefs have a receiver that is really kind of taking charge in that unit. But last week's game versus the Raiders was a great sign, and I think that there's more to come. And I mentioned earlier about Andy Reid's history with rookie wide receivers. So the narrative is such. Andy Reid's scheme is so hard for a wide receiver to come in and learn. And, when you're a rookie wide receiver in Andy Reid's system, it's just really hard for that player to have much production. And I looked at Andy Reid's 24 seasons coaching in the NFL, and yeah, I feel like that is true. He usually doesn't play a rookie wide receiver very many minutes. This isn't basketball. Very many snaps. Been watching a lot of college basketball lately. Doesn't give them a lot of snaps. And in terms of where Rashee Rice sits right now after week 12, he currently has the 6th most receiving yards for a rookie in Andy Reid's 24 years as a head coach. Andy has 5 more games left. So there's a very real possibility that Rashee Rice, before the season is over, will have the most receiving yards for a rookie in Andy Reid's system that he's ever had. The other players to note, 2008, Deshaun Watson has the most currently with 912 yards receiving. Keep in mind that was a 16-game season, so there's a little bit of skew going on here. Number 2 is Jeremy Maclin, another very good receiver, had 773 yards in 2009. Number 3 is Tyreek Hill in 2016 with 593 yards receiving. Number 4 is Number 4 is Reggie Brown in 2005, 571 yards receiving. Number 5 is Mecole Hardman in 2019 with 538 yards receiving. And then number 6, Rashee Rice, as we mentioned before, with 527 yards receiving. If Rashee Rice can put together another handful of 100-yard games, then I think it's a very realistic possibility that he will be the most productive rookie wide receiver that Andy Reid has ever had. And looking at the top 3 wide receivers in this list, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, and Tyreek Hill, that puts Rashee Rice in some pretty dang good company if you ask me. And so I think the future is super bright for Rashee Rice. And I often like to say this thing, well, okay, but what do your eyes see? What my eyes see with Rashee Rice is an explosive player that can get yards after the catch when he has the ball in his hands. He had a great back shoulder catch last week versus the Raiders. The Chiefs haven't really used him that way much this season, but I think that's an area where he is really good. He's also really good at catching jump balls down the field. The Chiefs just haven't given him those opportunities yet. And he has the athleticism to do it. He has the history of doing that with SMU. And so it's just a matter of time before even more of these wrinkles of Rashee Rice's game start to come into the fold for this Chiefs offense. So I would give, Rashee Rice right now a glowing grade of A in terms of being a rookie in Andy Reid's system, comparing himself against other rookies, and then his profile coming out in the draft. I think the Chiefs might have themselves a dog in Rashee Rice, and let's see if he can stack together some more really good games. And I really just, Andy Reid, if you're listening, Matt Nagy, if you're listening, Patrick Mahomes, if you're listening, you target Rashee Rice more than 6 times, you score over 34 points a game. So just keep that in your mind there, and let's keep throwing him the ball. And if the Chiefs keep throwing him the ball, it's going to open up so much more for this Chiefs offense, taking pressure off Travis Kelce, Drake taking pressure off MVS, all the other Chiefs wide receivers. And so they'll have to start to look at Rashee Rice as a legitimate threat, no longer give him one-on-one coverage or leaving him isolated versus one man in the zone. They're going to have to start getting a hat on him, and good things are to come. So that's my glowing praise for my draft crush, Rashee Rice. I love to see it. I had high hopes for him to start the season, and I'm hoping that he can kind of fill that Juju Smith-Schuster role and maybe even do a little more down the stretch. We'll see how that plays out. Moving on to the Packers game. So Chiefs have the Packers in Sunday Night Football. The Packers are currently 5-6. They have more losses than wins. According to the SRS scores, they're number 20 offensively and they're number 10 defensively, so they're more of a defensive-oriented team. Offensively, they're number 17 in points scored, number 18 in yards. Defensively, they're number 10 in points allowed, number 18 in yards allowed. They're winners of they're winners of 3 of their last 4 games. They've played the Rams, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, and Detroit. They won all those games except for their one loss at Pittsburgh, so they're playing really good football right now. And part of that has been because Jordan Love has had a bit of a resurgence at the second half of the season. For the whole year, though, he's played modestly at best. He currently has a 60.5% completion percentage, 2,599 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions for a rating of 87.4. Compare that to Mahomes, who's having maybe the worst year so far of his career as an NFL starter. He has Mahomes' 68.1% completion percentage, 2,917 yards passing, 21 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and a rating of 96.3. So Jordan Love, his play has been, in terms of touchdown to interceptions, kind of the rating, has been somewhat close to Mahomes. So we'll see how this game pans out. More detailed things about the Packers offense. In terms of passing yards, they're number 16. Passing touchdowns, they're number 9. They're number 14 in adjusted passing yards per attempt. Rushing the ball, they've had trouble. They're 21 in total yards, number 23 in touchdowns, number 20 in yards per attempt. And then their defensive side of the ball, like I said, their defense is better than their offense. They're number 9 in yards allowed, number 6 in touchdowns allowed, number 14 in adjusted yards per pass attempt. Where the Packers' defense is weak, though, is their rushing defense. They are number 27 in yards, number 20 in touchdowns, and number 23 in yards per attempt. So in this game, you want to see the Chiefs be able to establish the run, move the ball with Isaiah Pacheco, use him, keep him engaged, throw the ball to Rashee Rice, continue to target him, and see how things open up. Going into this game, I believe the Chiefs are about 5 or 6 point favorites. Last week, I picked the Chiefs to cover the spread and beat the Raiders, moving me to, I believe, 14-9 now. So I'm doing pretty well. And I think in this game, the Chiefs once again win outright and they cover the spread. So I'm picking Chiefs both angles for their numbers against Vegas. I think the Chiefs cover the spread. I think the Chiefs win this game. Hopefully I can move to 16-9. That'd be pretty impressive. And I just want to reiterate the three stats, kind of the mind-blowing stats that I have for Rashee Rice. The Chiefs are 3-0 and score 34.3 points per game when he has 6 or more targets. He's currently number 7 in total receiving yards for rookies. And then he has a shot to be to have the most receiving yards of any Andy Reid wide receiver if he continues to play a little better than he has so far this year. He right now is on pace for 814 yards, so that wedges in between Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin, beats out Tyreek Hill, so he's in really good company. And I think the Chiefs' future is bright with Rashee Rice. But now's the time where you give me your input. Let me know down in the comments what you think about Rashee Rice. Do you think that 3-0 record and those 34.3 points per game are a fluke? Do you think that the Chiefs' offense really opens up whenever he's given a lot of targets? Let me know down in the comments. And if you like the content here, make sure you hit that like button down below, somewhere down here. And then as always, subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, doing everything we can. Everyone that subscribes and watches this content, watches my video, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Hopefully my Chiefs draft crush, Rashee Rice, can continue to perform well and make that game versus the Raiders a regularity and not an outlier. But that's all I got. This is Gary signing out. Chiefs Kingdom, let's go. Here's a good win. Here's to hopefully a good win versus the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Take care. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.